Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Friday, and we will go through our usual stories, our usual routine. Let's start in Gaza, as we tragically have to pretty much every day for the past well over 2 years, because the Israeli genocide continues unabated and with full support, full backing of the U.S. government. Dozens of Gazans waiting for aid killed by Israeli gunfire, according to Deutsche Welle. That's the German world media, and it is just another heartbreaking day in Gaza. 70 killed yesterday, including 21 who had gathered near aid distro centers, and that's standard for Israel. That's what we're seeing over and over now. Is they herd, Israel does, the Israeli military herds Gazans, starving people, mothers, fathers, women, children, granddads. They're all herded together into a very small number of distro centers where the Israeli military takes pot shots at them. Sure, some get food and they're willing to brave those bullets because otherwise it's starvation. Otherwise it's death from dehydration. But it is a terrible, terrible circumstance that Israel has created for these people as part of their genocide. It is so upsetting. I don't know what, we can use any words we want. It's horrible. It's evil. It's sinister. It's wrong. It's immoral. And that's what is happening right now in our world. And I want to just, let's just see if I'm getting audio out there. So I do hear it. So that's good news. Yay. There's audio, woohoo, after some challenges getting this program. And I discovered what the issue was, folks, so I don't think this will happen again. There's always slips between lip and hand. Is that how that works? What is that? I don't know what that expression is. If you know what it is, let me know. But again, just a terrible, terrible circumstance in Gaza, and heartbreaking. I'm going to put this up on we're kind of giving you the play-by-play. We'll just go ahead and put this up on the Halitics feed as well. And then I'll be able to focus, just on today's program. The free-for-all. Don't have an updated death count from Gaza. The Anadolu Ajansi, usually my go-to source for those grim statistics, did not have an update today before airtime. So I'm going with the old numbers, but we do have the 70 dead according to Deutsche Welle. And we use yesterday's figures of 55,706 confirmed dead Gazans, and Trump and Netanyahu responsible for 5,401 since October 18th. Of course, Netanyahu's responsible for all of them. But previous to March 18, previous to the Trump administration, that was the Harris-Biden team that was so whose hands are bloody from this ongoing genocide. And they continue. I mean, it's not like they get a pass now because they're out of power. They're not using their bully pulpits in any way to address the killing. I mean, I guess Harris made one comment, which was, "See, I told you so." Really? Yeah, that's your answer? Not, hey, let's lead a genuine, progressive, populist opposition that has some chance, maybe, to defeat these people? No, we're not hearing that at all from Harris. And why would we? I mean, because that's not who she is. We talked about this with Peter B. yesterday. Democratic Party is an enormous part of the problem. And what I'm trying to do here, and I do hope you'll join me, by the way, click like, click subscribe. I'll put those little links up now. We do need every little interaction that you have, every time you take one step to let folks know you appreciate Halitics. That helps us get the word out. That helps us get our increase our subscriber base and get this program in front of other folks so we can have this dialogue, this essential dialogue on how we can make the world just a little bit better, how we can take on the truly existential threats that we face, including now war with Iran, which the Israeli tail wagging the American dog. Netanyahu not pleased, not happy that America was engaged, that Trump was engaged in dialogue with Iran, did not want any kind of peace negotiations to happen, did not want normalization of relations between the U.S. and Iran, was terrified that Iran, if it had the ear of the president, would be able to explain precisely why it views Israel's horrific acts, its atrocities, as war crimes. So Israel decided they were just going to go ahead and attack a country that was not a threat to them, was not a risk to them, except to the extent that Iran was one of the only countries in the world, to its great credit, that is supporting the victims in Gaza, the victims of Israel in Gaza. Trump, under tremendous pressure to join in the attack on Iran, to kill more Iranians, to kill more Muslims. Trump, under tremendous pressure from within the administration and from without his administration, is being pushed, bullied into, and I'm not saying, he's a bully himself, but there is without question, a military-industrial complex that would love to start using more weapons, bombing, shooting off missiles, and the like. And they're pressing Trump to go forward. He says he'll decide it within 2 weeks. I don't think he's going to withstand the pressure. I think he will chicken out. I think his general instincts have been, and we've seen this, have been more pro-peace. But that's not going to, I don't think he's got the guts to stand up to the combined pressure from left and right. From, when I say left, I mean the Democratic Party and clearly most members of the Republican Party and all of the military advisors and the like, with few exceptions, that we go into Iran, that we create yet another power vacuum that will be filled by even greater, even more extreme elements that will do more harm. And of course, our own military action will lead to many, many thousands, perhaps millions of deaths. As we know, the war on the people of Iraq ultimately led to over 1 million deaths, likely because of that war, that bipartisan adventurism that Trump's Republican predecessor, H.W. Bush, not W. Bush. H.W. Bush, actually, when he went into Iraq, ultimately did not, he did not go into Baghdad. He stopped Iraq from and pushed them back to their borders when they invaded Kuwait. And that was a better decision. I thought there shouldn't have been a war at all. But it's true that Iraq did invade Kuwait. And it is true that H.W. pushed Iraq back into its borders. And I guess in the end, I can't say that was a mistake. It worked out, I guess, as well as it could have. Some felt H.W.'s son W, I guess, wanted Saddam to be toppled, and the result was an absolute, utter disaster, and also led to Trump's election, right? Because Trump was the anti-Iraq war candidate in 2016. No question that helped him. Trump, hoping, I guess, this issue kind of dies out a little bit under a lot of pressure from elites to bomb Iran, but his base is being rallied against it, right? And there are Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey in Kentucky. There are some decent Republicans on this issue for sure. And they're saying no. Steve Bannon, a lot of MAGA, the populist wing, does not want this war. And hopefully they'll prevail. A lot of people do want this war. Here's one of them, at least. He certainly is trying to bait. He's certainly trying to bait Trump. And if you're and I talked about this with Peter B. If you're the kind of person, or you're somebody who wants to shame Trump voters, attack them, insult them, condemn them, you have to look at your own party. You have to look at your own team. And I mean, how is this in any way defensible? How is this anything but completely morally reprehensible? Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democrat leader, this isn't some kind of, extreme Democrat you can write off as a Joe Manchin type. This is the guy that the Democrats every 2 years, or whenever they choose a new leader, I think it's every 2 years, they vote for this guy.
When it comes to negotiating with the terrorist government of Iran, Trump's all over the lot. One day he sounds tough, the next day he's backing off. And now, all of a sudden, we find out that Witkoff and Rubio are negotiating a secret side deal with Iran. What kind of bull is this? They're going to sound tough in public and then have a side deal that lets Iran...
So he wants war, clearly. No side deal, no negotiating, nothing. We're going to bomb. We want to bomb Iran. And you say, well, he's not explicitly saying that. And I'm the kind of person who always says, well, what is he explicitly saying? Look at the language, though.
In public and then have a side deal that lets Iran get away with everything?
Get away with? What are they getting away with, Schumer? What's your response? Obviously, you want to punish them, right? We can't let them get away with it. With what? With trying to stop genocide?
It's outrageous. We need to make that side deal public. Any side deal should be before Congress and, most importantly, the American people. If Taco Trump is already...
And see, Taco is... Trump always chickens out. So, yeah, don't be a chicken. Go bomb Iran. And I'm very much afraid that he will chicken out, that Trump will cave, will indeed cave to the warmongers, the extremists. And that would be the chickening out. All right, we've got a caller. Is that you, Ari? I think I shouldn't guess the numbers, but I guess that is you, right?
Thank you, Hal. Yeah, I was trying to get your attention earlier about your audio problem.
You did, and I thank you for that very much. Yeah, we had some issues, some challenges. I think I've got everything fixed for the next program, but... yeah, no, greatly appreciated. Thank you.
No problem at all. I'm glad to do it. You're doing great. Thank you. I thought maybe you got hacked or something.
Well, I think it was what we call operator error. That is my term for when the operator, makes an error. And I was dealing with some issues with the recording that I did of the Peter B. Collins video yesterday, the humble host, and it came out fine. I was happy with it, but I noticed one little technical problem that you wouldn't be aware of, but I was, and I fixed that. But in fixing that, I may have, and I'm not certain about this, but I would guess that's what caused the silence this morning, or the early in, when I started at noon.
I just want to take a couple of 1 minute or so about something I found out about a week ago, maybe before. Something called, you may have heard of it. It's called NUMEC. It's spelled N like Nancy, U like universe, M like Michael, EC. I forget what it stands for. It's an acronym for the nuclear. You can find a lot of. There's one video by a guy named Brian Dawson. I don't know if you know that gentleman. He used to do a lot of podcasting. He's fairly young. But now I looked at it and I said, wow, that documentary is so busy and cluttered with a lot of names going back to back to the Kennedy days. So I don't know if you've ever looked into it. It's really worth a lot of people looking into it, because apparently this would expose something that Israel, going back to the days of Kennedy again, somehow they managed to get the nuclear material someplace, I forget the name of it, in someplace in Pennsylvania, and it's a whole big soap opera, one of those things, like Whitney Webb. I don't know if you know Whitney Webb and Whitney Webb, the book that she wrote. It's all these names and mobsters, and it's very complicated. But I looked it up on a different place, and it was on C-SPAN. They had a gentleman who was very familiar with it, and he could not deny or accept whatever they call those that phrase. Could not confirm or deny whatever, but apparently there's something to it, and not enough has been. But there was a C-SPAN. Actually, you can look up C-SPAN and then put NUMEC next to it. Maybe you'll find it that way. Or just put NUMEC, and you're going to see probably Brian Dawson, that fellow, and some other things that I saw. So what am I getting at with this is that it was apparently done in a very shadowy, very quiet way. And I think it's worth discussing more how a country that doesn't accept that they have a program was able to acquire this, and it's something Americans need to wake up to. And that's really all, because we need to know if this was the case, okay, fine, but why don't you even declare the fact that you are a nuclear state, but you're always pointing the finger, meaning Israel, pointing the finger at Iran that cannot have it because they're more dangerous than you are. They're not the ones committing Jewish genocide. They're not, maybe.
I just want to interrupt you there. I agree with you 100%. I am on this in this issue. I'm on the side of Iran. I mean, Israel is the monster, not Iran. And I did look up NUMEC, and this is under the Apollo affair in Wikipedia. I was not aware of this. I thank you for bringing it to my attention, but it goes into quite a bit of detail as to how Israel may have obtained enriched uranium. I think, to be honest with you, Ari, the idea that Israel is a nuclear state is pretty well accepted. I know they're not officially deemed a nuclear power, and they are not a signatory to any nuclear treaties, although they most certainly should be under the circumstances. But I think most people recognize that they do have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and that means it makes them off the hook with the EIAO, what is that United Nations Atomic Energy Committee that goes and inspects facilities. So yeah, this brings up a lot of other implications. This is being used as a leverage, which I always suspected, because I've heard of the fact of the possibility of Israel being nuclear. So using this as a leverage, in quotes, meaning if you guys don't do my bidding, well, guess what I'm going to do, And there's also this Samson, I guess you've heard of Samson, what do they call it? It's a declaration of some sort by Israel. Like, if everything goes kaput, I'm just going to blow this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can believe it. I can believe that they'll take everything down with them. And I did a program earlier this week where I was saying Israel could destroy us all, and they seem to be kind of moving clearly in that direction. And unfortunately, Trump is not someone we can hope or trust to stop them. Of course, neither was Harris. So I throw up in my hands. I think you saw the video with Peter B yesterday, and the thing is, Ari, this program is about looking for answers, and I don't have any.
I know. A lot of questions. You're right. A lot of questions. And one thing about this might sound a little funny, but I wish we'd have something in place. It's like a Supreme Court ruling that these presidents that get in place, they should be checked. When you get old enough, you have to get checked at the MVA, Department of Motor Vehicles, so you're able to drive. Is your eyesight good? Are you have any handicaps? Are you on pills? Or we should have a test you get to be 80 years old, maybe you're falling apart, sir. You almost have 80, 70.
I think that's fair. That's a good point too. All right, before I let you go, I mentioned solutions, and what I hear from some people, a lot of people in my circles, is the solution is you don't vote for Trump, you vote for the Democrat. You don't vote for Green, you vote for the Democrat. I just want to make this point, and I do want your response. It is the free-for-all. And then I got to let you go because I got to move on. But I put this up here because Tulsi Gabbard has been a voice of sanity, a voice of reason in the Trump administration, the director of national intelligence, saying flat out, we do not believe our research, our evidence does not support the allegation by Israel that Iran has a nuclear weapon or is trying to obtain nuclear weapons. And because of that, NBC News, at least, is reporting that she's being sidelined. The reason I bring this up is because the Democratic Party unanimously voted against Tulsi Gabbard. They voted for the Hawks, many of them. They voted, I think, pretty much unanimously for Rubio, for example, the senators from the Democratic Party. But when it comes to a somewhat, a more pro-peace nominee, Gabbard, who's been right on issue after issue, who's opposed our wars, has opposed adventures overseas, has rightly spoken out against them. The Democrats, hate her. They want to just destroy her. And I think this is, to me, very, very powerful reasoning why we need to go in a different direction than the Democratic Party.
Yes, Tulsi did her best. I don't know if she's still trying out there. Otherwise, what good is she? She's speaking up for what's real. And he's under. I don't know what's wrong with with Trump these days. I don't know. He's under some pressure, or something's going on in there. That's what's happening.
Well, all these presidents and people inside. I mean, the deep state is a real thing. It is real. It exerts a lot of pressure on all government officials, including the president, to be pro-war. And that was Antony Blinken. That was Biden. That was Hillary for sure. That was Kamala. And it's the same situation even with Trump, who has, to be fair to Trump, been better than they have been in on occasion, not all the time. His support for Israel is disgraceful. It's criminal, but Absolutely. He hasn't been as bad on every issue as some of these other folks.
Kennedy. We haven't had a good Democrat since Kennedy, in my opinion. You might agree, but thank you for what.
Well, I thanks so much for that call. That is Ari checking in. Really appreciate his insights. And I thanks for the call, Ari. Just let Ari go. I think the best president of my lifetime, began during the Kennedy administration. I was about 6, I think if I do the math right, 7 months old, 8 months old when he was assassinated, just over 8 months old. He was just killed in November. I was born in April. So 3 + 8 = 11. So third month, or 7 months, right? April's the 7th, whatever, doesn't matter. I think the best president of my lifetime was LBJ because of civil rights, because of the Great Society. I think he, far more than Kennedy, really did push aggressively to make life better for poor, struggling, and working Americans of all races, of all ethnicities. So I give him props for that. Yes, he did continue the Kennedy process of going deeper and deeper into Vietnam, getting more and more bogged down in that quagmire, and that was a terrible stain on his presidency. And I have been somewhat forgiving of that not because I say, well, civil rights on one side of the scale is heavier and is better, outweighs the good of civil rights outweighs the bad of the Vietnam War. I don't balance it that way. The reason I give more slack to Kennedy than to LBJ than many do, and the reason I and I could be wrong on this, but my assessment is that LBJ in the moment was under tremendous pressure from the Democratic hawks led by Scoop Jackson. I've talked about this before, by powerful Washington insiders, columnist Joe Alsop from the Washington Star, I think at that point, under tremendous pressure to send in more and more advisors into Vietnam to escalate in Vietnam. And he was told that if you don't escalate, if you don't commit to escalating in Vietnam, then you don't get civil rights. You don't get the Great Society. That was the devil's bargain that I understand LBJ made. And I know there's revisionist history that says that this is the way it was, the way I'm describing, others who say, no, LBJ could have disengaged from Vietnam and still gotten civil rights in the Great Society. That may be true. My sense is that he believed he had to choose one or the other. Now, what he should have done, in my opinion, is as soon as he got those votes he needed for civil rights in the Great Society, he should have started pulling out of Vietnam. So what? So you lie to the senators. So you say, oh, sure, we're going to send in more. We'll send in hundreds of thousands of troops into Vietnam, and then you just stop it. But it would have been very, very difficult to do that. Maybe I'm giving him a little too much credit. Maybe he doesn't deserve it, but that's my story, and I'm sticking it to it. Tulsi Gabbard, an outspoken critic. Remember, this is the woman that was deemed by many, I believe by Hillary Clinton, as the worst of all of the Trump appointees. Quite extraordinary. Remember, the Democrats also they tried to torpedo Tulsi, couldn't quite do it. The one voice of sanity in Washington right now. They also did torpedo Matt Gaetz, who was similarly, right? He was for Attorney General. He would have been a much, much better Attorney General, much less corrupt attorney general than Pam Bondi, but the Democrats stopped him as well. So again, that party is not on your side. It's not on the side of working people. That's a party that, like the Republican, should go the way of the buffalo. Gabbard's politically perilous position. I like that. I like that. Assonance, is that what you call it? Or consonance when it's the same sound. Politically perilous position burst into the open this week when Trump brushed her back. So there's some more brushed her back over her testimony. I guess, again, assonance, over her testimony to Congress in March. At that time, she said the U.S. intelligence community did not believe Iran was building a nuclear weapon. So this administration, much like the Biden administration, completely ignoring its own intelligence. The American intelligence community saying Israel is preventing humanitarian aid from getting to the Gazans. Therefore, we should stop providing weapons to Israel. And nevertheless, we continued to do it. We continued to supply in direct violation of the Leahy Act. Biden, Harris continued to supply Israel with bombs, with missiles, with guns, with bullets. So they, ignored their intelligence community. Well, that's exactly what Trump is doing as well. By the way, the assonance is the wrong word. I knew it was wrong when I said it. It is not where you have the same syllable, you have the same consonant repetition. It's like penitence and reticence, apparently. So you have a similar sound. Not quite a rhyme like scale, shale, but close. Reticence, penitence. I'm going to look this up, though. No, same consonant sound. Repetitive, repeating consonant sounds are called consonants. Well, that makes sense, right? Consonants would be repeating consonant sounds. Politically perilous position is a consonant. All right, 240-242-5646. We heard from Ari. Would love to hear from you. We also heard from Chucky Schumer. Not so great to hear from him. I have to tell you, I'm very concerned about the New York City mayoral race. I was concerned before. I do think it looks bad. It really does. Now, I'm going up to New York. I'm putting my feet where my mouth is. I will be canvassing for Zoran Mamdani tomorrow and Sunday. It's going to be hot, but not too hot. I believe I'll have my water. It's 3 hours. It's worth it each day. It's worth it for me. This is not a headline I think you want if you're running for any office. I don't think you want the word tearful in the headline, especially, even as a sub-headline, especially if it's a man, right? I mean, I think a woman candidate maybe can get away with being tearful a little bit more than a man. It depends on the situation, too. If you're crying about a dead child, yes, it's okay. But here, Mamdani is criticized for intifada remarks. He talked about a global intifada against Israel, that's what we're witnessing. And he seemed to be saying it characterizing it as a positive thing. Now, I think it would be positive if there was a global intifada against Israel. I wish there was. I'm trying to start one, but I'm not running for mayor of New York. I will tell you this: if I were running for mayor of New York, I would stand by those words, as Mamdani at first did. But we'll play the clip. This is in a moment from The Hill Rising, where he sort of. Well, he doesn't. I'll play it for you, and you can see what you think. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. 240-242-5646. Regardless, I don't think this helps him. I mean, we're in right now early voting. Election day is Tuesday. This just can't be good. And I think there's a way he could have handled it that would have been. I mean, it certainly wouldn't stop me from voting for him. And this is what's so sad: is these kind of silly trivialities ultimately that are irrelevant to whether you'd be a great mayor or not, or a good mayor or not. Or in fact, I think Mamdani showing he would be a much better mayor by far than Cuomo, even now, even given this incident, if you want to call it that, this controversy, this actually highlights his strength, his compassion, his concern for the underdog. All of that means he'd be a better mayor than Cuomo. But some may see this as a weakness, as he's not going to stand up to Trump. So an interview with the Bulwark posted Tuesday, Mamdani was asked whether the question global intifada made him uncomfortable. He said in response that the slogan captured a desperate desire for equality and equal rights and standing up for Palestinian human rights. And then he invoked the U.S. Holocaust Museum, saying that it described intifada in Arabic language descriptions of the 1944 Warsaw Uprising. So he's saying, hey, there's an uprising against Israel. Even the Holocaust Museum used that same term to describe Israel, Jewish resistance. So, of course, Mamdani's right. I mean, of course, Israel is the Nazi country of today. I cannot say that enough. And I know some people think I'm overstating it, or I'm exaggerating, or I'm being hyperbolic. No, they are hurting people. I mean, look, the latest news, they herd people together who are desperate for food, who are starving because of what Israel's doing, and then they shoot at them. They kill them. That's Nazism. That's Baba Yar. There's really no difference, right? What did the Nazis do in Ukraine? They herded 33,000 villagers together. They took them to a pit and they shot them in the back, and they all fell in the pit and died. Or they were dead either when they got into the pit, or they died from their wounds in the pit or from exposure. So that's mass murder. What is Israel doing? It's starving Gazans. It's saying, you want food, come to one of our 4 or 5 little distribution centers, walk 20 miles while you're starving, while you're basically a walking skeleton. You look like the pictures we saw from Auschwitz, what the Nazis did to Jews. Well, now we're telling you, when you're starving, when your children have no food, that you have to come to some distribution center, 5 miles away from your house. And when you get there, you might get shot. So I'm sorry, I don't see the difference. I don't see the moral, it's a morally equivalent. Apparently the U.S. Holocaust Museum didn't like this. They got all angry. Oh, how dare he invoke Nazism to describe, to try to justify intifada, which we all know is some horrible anti-Semitic term. No, F you, Holocaust Museum. F you, anyone who criticizes Mamdani. But Mamdani, and that's what his answer should have been. That's what he should have said to all of his critics. How dare you call me anti-Semitic, you murderers, you defenders of murderers, you descendants of the Nazis. How dare you call me anti-Semitic? That's what he should have said. But here's what he did say. And look, again, this would never in a million years stop me from voting for him. But unfortunately, because he isn't on the attack in response to these wholly unjust, bad faith criticisms of him, because he's not attacking his critics, some will think he's weak.
New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is speaking out after he faced backlash for comments he made on the globalize the intifada phrase. He held back tears during his response. Let's take a look.
I've said at every opportunity that there's no room for anti-Semitism in this city, in this country.
So right there, when he says that, people are going to think, oh, maybe there's room for anti-Semitism in his campaign, right? When he says there's no room for it. He's letting the Cuomo neoliberal warmongers set the terms of the discussion right there. I've said there's no room for anti-Semitism. Again, the response should be, these are shameless people. These are despicable people to criticize me, to allege some form of racism or anti-Semitism against me. I am fighting against a genocide. I am calling out evildoers, and they don't like it. They don't like it, so they're attacking me. That's the response I would have liked.
Messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim.
So he has been a victim, clearly. There's no question he's been the one attacked, and it's so wrong. He has been attacked, but he could have said, again, started out by, how dare these racists, these bigots attack me as anti-Semitism? I'm the one who's been attacked. And then talk about it. That's who they are. That's who my critics are. They're defenders, they're apologists for genocide. That's what he could have said. I would have said it.
I get threats on my life. On the people that I love. And I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction.
The phrase in
All right, so look, of course I'll vote for him. I mean, this would only make me more determined. This only proves even more, if any evidence were needed, the immorality of the anti-Mamdani forces, their cruelty, their cynicism, their dishonesty. It really proves it, right, to dare call him anti-Semitic. But I fear he could have leveraged this in a way that would have perhaps redounded to his benefit. And that is not what happened here. And instead, he does look, and in fact, he is somewhat on the defensive in that video. And that's unfortunate. All right, 240-242-5646. I wanted to get to the discussion I had yesterday to just continue it a little bit more with Peter B. Collins. And he had took some issue with my use of the word woke as a pejorative, criticizing, I guess, some candidates or some politicians or some self-described, self-claimed self-appointed leftists or progressives as woke. And Peter B. pushed back, and I was saying, hey, it's where woke is where you center your own grievances and you base them on identity, right? I didn't get something I want because I'm black. I didn't get something I want because I'm transgender, not looking at, the bigger picture. Well, maybe I did something wrong, right? Attributing bad things that happen to you is because of your identity is, to me, the worst aspect of wokeism. And I wasn't maybe as clear as I should have been. I mean, this was actually in my mind, and I may have been, I don't know. But I want to delve into this a little more because I think what it really comes down to is, to a degree, different definitions and different uses of the term between Peter B. and me. So, according to Wikipedia, the term woke began as early, I did not know it was this old, as 90 years ago to refer to, or even more, they even have some examples from the 1920s, to refer to awareness of racial prejudice and discrimination, often in the construction stay woke. And as I understand, maybe in the 70s, it really became the stay woke idea, which is, hey, don't forget how bad the oppression is. Don't forget, this is really important. We have to fight it. We have to fight racism. We have to stand up against it. And I don't disagree with that. Where I have a problem is where racism is used, or any kind of ism is used to describe any pathology or to describe the etiology of a particular unjust or of an unjust outcome, or an outcome that's unjust to the person who's using the term woke, who's saying, hey, I'm woke to injustice. I think, Mike, there used to be a term that's not used very much anymore, microaggressions. I guess a microaggression these days is when you misgender somebody, right? Like somebody who calls themselves, who has transitioned, right? And they were born or conceived male, but now they say they're a woman or a girl. And if you refer to them as a him or he, that's a misgendering, right? Or there's a term dead naming, where you use someone's old name, right, rather than their new name. And that's could be considered a microaggression or worse. So you're woke to that. I'm alive to it. They're calling me a boy, or they're calling me a man. They're calling Leah Thomas a man, the Penn swimmer. And that's a microaggression, or that's a macroaggression. I'm woke to that. I get it. I get the hurt that they're inflicting deliberately. And, maybe there are people who are doing that. I'm not saying they're not, but there are also people who are genuinely not sure what sex you are, what gender you go by. So I have a problem with jumping to the conclusion that anytime someone does something that offends you, it's because they're bigots, they're ignorance, they're callous. They're not anti-racist, so therefore they're racist. I have a real problem with that. I think there's too much outrage in society for, for what I would call pretty de minimis stuff, where it doesn't prevent you from eating. I think there's not enough outrage that there are people sleeping under bridges. That, to me, is what's outrageous. Not somebody is upset because, and I'll give you an example from law school, not someone who insists that they were shushed in the library because they're black, and if they had been white, they wouldn't have been shushed. Well, maybe that's true. But you know what? If you were making noise in the library, then don't make noise in the library. So to me, that's the problem with woke and wokeism, is that not that you're aware of racial prejudice and discrimination or any kind of prejudice and discrimination. We should be aware of them and we should fight them. But that you invoke it, you weaponize it. And I think that's where Peter B. Collins and I had a bit of a disagreement. I want to give some more examples because I think this is a really important, honestly, topic. So I'm going to play a video from Brianna Joy Gray where she really addresses her concerns about wokeism. But let me just, before we get to that, I use the Wikipedia definition, and I was quite taken by this image. This was just, I'm not cherry picking. This is what Wikipedia had when I went to, because I Googled woke and I was like looking at it and I was trying to figure out where I was going to go with this. The definition though, where you're alert to prejudice, you're alert to racism. I understand. I understood that, and I understand that to be the definition of woke as we use it largely today. But I think it's also morphed into ascribing racism, ascribing bigotry to behaviors that one may not like, even if we don't have really, even if that's not fair, even if it's not true. And I think that's where I was going with my criticism, that people use the term to avoid any kind of self-examination, to avoid self-awareness, to shame other people. I think that's wrong. So according to Wikipedia here, they use that same term that I said, being alert to prejudice, being aware of it. But they provide this image here of then Congresswoman Marcia Fudge in 2018 voting, and with a T-shirt that says "Stay Woke, Vote." Now, I believe 100% that we should vote in every election, and I'm glad she got people out to vote. That's a really, really good thing. But I did think there was a real irony in Marcia Fudge, Congresswoman Fudge at the time, using the term woke in this context to calling people to vote in 2018. Now, I'll get to more on Fudge. I just wanted to put that out there, and then I want to play this clip of, and it's a bit long, so I'll maybe interrupt it, of one of my favorites. And I, by the way, put the link to this in the show description, I believe, let's see, why am I having trouble with this? There we go. With Brianna Joy Gray. So we'll see if we can get Brianna Joy Gray up. I'm struggling here to get her on screen, but we'll get the video in where she talks about her issues with the term woke. And this all came about, just to set the table, since as I'm still working to get the video up for you. She interviewed I guess a Republican, I'm not really sure what their politics were, who's very critical of the word of wokeism, very critical of woke actions, and ascribed all sorts of bad societal outcomes to people being too woke. And so Brianna Joy Gray asked her, well, how do you define woke? And she couldn't do it. She was like, woke is this terrible scourge. But then she couldn't say what she meant by wokeism. So here's Brianna Joy Gray, without further ado, discussing the term woke and the way she has issues with its use in some cases.
But I don't exactly have a reputation of being a woke scold. I spent a good part of my career as a leftist journalist critiquing what I believe to be certain overreaches of the left that, in my view, undermine important substantive fights for racial, gender, and economic equality. My very first 2 viral articles as a journalist were critiques of weaponized identity politics and of cultural appropriation discourse. In those articles, I questioned whether the gender and/or race of politicians like Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris were in fact being used to insulate them from legitimate concerns about their records on criminal justice issues, or in Clinton's case, her choice of an anti-choice VP. I highlighted the perversity of Clinton using, dare I say, a kind of wokeness to excuse not regulating the banks more harshly in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. Well, breaking up the banks and racism was a line she used to push back against Bernie's call for greater punishment for the bankers that destroyed the economy.
All right, so let me stop it there for just a second. We'll play a little more, but it's really, really good stuff what she's presenting here, what Brianna Joy Gray is presenting. And she's saying, hey, the wokeness that Hillary Clinton tried to invoke was, hey, the real problem, what we have to be alert to all the time, and this is what Ibram X. Kendi said as well, is it's racism, racism, racism. We've got to fight it. We've got to stop it. We've got to be anti-racist. So Bernie says we got to break up the big banks, but will that end racism? What if he's wrong? What if it doesn't? And I mean, and I guess she was, and I'm not saying that's like a great definition of, like that I agree with what Hillary Clinton's definition of wokeness is. Well, I'm woke because I will only take actions that are going to end racism. Obviously, that's absurd. That's not what woke should be. But she's using it to say, hey, Bernie's calling for some sort of colorblind solution. Right? We should break up the big banks. That doesn't specifically address injustices to African Americans. So, you know, he's really not on your side because he's not demanding this some sort of woke solution. Not that she ever did either, but she's using that kind of ism to attack Bernie by saying, well, his solution would end racism. And Brianna Joy Gray is saying that's ridiculous. You're actually using this term. You're weaponizing it to stop a policy that would make life better. A colorblind policy, right? Breaking up the big banks, but a policy that would be much better that would lead to better outcomes for most Americans and disproportionately better for African Americans. Play a little more from that.
First, for obvious reasons. Black people suffered disproportionately during the housing crisis, as more black wealth was rooted in real estate than was the case for other racial groups. Not only would breaking up the banks literally help black people, but nothing in Hillary's policy agenda was geared toward curing racism anyway. It was a rhetorical deflection that weaponized a sincere investment in traditional wokeness, e.g. racial equality, to do the exact opposite, protect the banks at the expense of people of color and working class people more broadly. In the cultural...
All right, so I don't think you can do better than that. And I did put the link to the video in the description, but you can watch the whole thing. But yeah, no, that's my issue. And I understand Peter B. Collins is going to say, well, yeah, what Hillary did was faux woke. It was weaponizing wokeness. It was wrong. But I think we've come to a point where there's a general use of the term, and I think he decries this, and I understand why. I understand it. He decries the use of the term to refer to that kind of performative actions, right? That like land acknowledgments and the like, that we're woke to the injustice that the lands that we live on now were formerly occupied by Native Americans, and we pushed them off the land. Native indigenous peoples, we pushed them off the land. We killed them. We gave them smallpox. We herded them onto reservations, and we're woke to that. We know. So we're going to start our meeting by saying we recognize that we're on, Penobscot land or something of that nature. Well, that's woke, but it's meaningless. It doesn't do anything for the people that are victims of the policy that we're referring to. So I think that's where we've got to, where a lot of people view as woke. And even people on the left would say, well, I'm woke, so we do a land acknowledgement. And it's kind of, they're not alive to the irony that they're doing something that really doesn't do anything to make life better for poor, struggling, and working people. And again, and I think a good example of that is Marcia Fudge. So Marcia Fudge, using the woke, language here with that T-shirt she's got that says "Stay woke, vote, stay woke." But how did she use her power? How did she use her influence as a congresswoman to? And since woke is used to describe a focus, a centering, if you will, of African American concerns and concerns of other marginalized community. If she's saying you should stay woke, you should be alive to prejudice, to racism, to injustice that's unfairly burdening people of color, then how did she use her power? And I wasn't intrigued because I knew the answer. I knew that when she had an opportunity to back a real progressive for president, when she was an influential, I'll put it that way, an influential black politico in an important state, a congresswoman from Ohio in the Cleveland-Akron area, was her district. Did she choose to endorse the presidential candidate whose policies would unquestionably have been better for her constituents? It's a poor district. It's poor to middle class. There are some, more affluent sections of the Ohio district, Cuyahoga County, where she represents, but they're not affluent by and large, not at all. And Bernie's policies, I think everyone agrees. I don't think there's really any doubt would be better for working people. Even Chuck Schumer pretty much acknowledged it, and he said, well, we're going to lose some working class votes in Pennsylvania and Ohio, but we'll replace them with the suburban voters, with the country club set. So even Chuck Schumer acknowledged the Democratic policies, the neo-lib policies championed by Hillary Clinton weren't good for working people. Who did Marcia Fudge, who represented those exact people, who did she choose to endorse in 2016 when there was a real populist, a real progressive, and Bernie was much more populist then than he is now, running for president? Well, this is the list. I showed you the caption list of Hillary Clinton supporters in 2016. And there's Fudge and Gabbard. And we talked about Tulsi earlier. That's just because FG, right? Fudge, FU is towards the end of the Fs, or is the last F on the list. And Tulsi, GAB, is the first G on the list. There's a lot of people on that list. But I was glad, in a way, it made it easy for me to just simply cut and paste that. So why is Gabbard different from Fudge? Remember, Tulsi actually left the DNC to go work for Bernie. She's an asterisk because public officials serving public officials who indicated their support after Clinton's presumptive nomination on June 11 are denoted with an asterisk. So Tulsi came on board after Bernie was eliminated, after Bernie endorsed her, which he shouldn't have done, but he did. So there it is. Fudge was all in for Hillary. She was a supporter before the decision was made, before the nomination was in the bag for Clinton. She supported Hillary from early on. And I want to make sure of that, because it's one thing to endorse the Democrat. I don't think that you should have. I don't think that anybody should have endorsed Hillary or Trump in 2016. I think that was a misguided at best, corrupt at worst decision. But I hold you far less responsible for the election of Trump and for the subsequent degradation in our country over the past 9 years. I hold you far less responsible, far less guilty of that if, like Tulsi, you actually endorse Bernie and you recognize that Hillary was a terrible choice and Hillary was bad for our country and Hillary was herself, as we've seen now, is genocidal. But Marcia Fudge endorsed Hillary. This is the one who's saying stay woke. So wokism means we put our own community's interests above everything else. And in this case, my community, me, Marcia Fudge, I want Hillary because it will benefit me politically if I endorse her and I convince you, my constituents, to vote for her, even though her policies are bad for you. So, that's where I get my very, very negative reaction towards the term woke. People like Marcia Fudge using it to defend and justify their very, very bad actions. Jim Clyburn saying, I didn't see, or no, it wasn't Jim Clyburn. John, the SNCC, Jordan. It wasn't John Jordan. It was, must have been John from now deceased Atlanta Congressman John Lewis. Why is it so hard for me? John Lewis saying I never saw Bernie in the South. Well, that's because he was leading anti-segregation efforts in the North, in Chicago, at the university there. So to me, that's where I have a problem with woke. Trump's really bad. It's not like the Democrats are really bad. Trump's really bad. Got to go in a different direction. Got to vote green wherever you can. So here, Wall Street, this is from The Lever, whatever, by, the writer here is Luke Goldstein, but I guess the publisher is, somebody I have a problem with, from Colorado. What is it? Sirota. I don't like Sirota. But I think this is a really important article. Wall Street gets a Trump tax break to fire workers. And why they say that is because private equity will get even more opportunities, more ability to deduct more interest payments when they take over companies and gut them and fire people. So one of the drivers behind the private equity takeover of many companies, which has led to bankruptcies as a result, and the article lists a few, I think Red Lobster, and I can't remember some of the others. I think Toys R Us may have also been a victim of private equity buying company and then sort of looting it of assets, firing everybody, cutting its costs to the bone, and using the cash flow that remains to pay off debt and deducting the interest payments from their tax bill. So private equity hasn't been doing so well. I mean, people sort of caught on. This is a scam. It's not good for the shareholders, the existing shareholders, unless they sell. But if you can't sell to the takeover people, then you're left with stock that will almost certainly decline in value because the company has massive debt. The company is not probably going to be long for this world. And the takeover folks who give themselves titles, CFO, CEO, CTO, they pay themselves exorbitant salaries. They may make some increased dividend payments, so that could benefit the existing shareholders. But on balance, their ownership stake is going to the value of their ownership stake is going to decline because the takeover people, the new management team, doesn't want to build or maintain a successful long-term operation, but merely to strip the assets and use the whatever they can get for them to pay themselves and to pay off their loans. Well, the loans, now you can get even more deduction from your taxes. And here's what the lever writes. The bipartisan provision, which lowers or actually increases the amount that you can deduct from your tax liability, increases the amount that you can use against any profits. Or I don't know if you can even get some kind of a rebate, but what it does is it says you can deduct even more of those interest payments you make, which are, again, money borrowed against the value of the company itself. The new bipartisan provision is a combination of a multi-million-dollar lobbying campaign by private equity giants. Bipartisan. So Democrats joined in this. Can't be good for us. The arcane provision buried in Trump's big, beautiful bill would raise the business tax deduction that private equity companies can claim on interest payments they make to pay back loans. So the reason they say, well, this is going to reward companies that fire workers is because now you get more money when when private equity takes you over, you get a bigger break, which makes it a more attractive option to do this. It means in the end, there'll be more firings, more terminations, more jobs ended. This is what happens when the Democratic Party completely betrays workers, gives up on workers, stops supporting workers. Well, they're going to go elsewhere. And in this case, unsurprisingly, they went to Trump, who did talk a more populist game, even though he has not governed in any way, just as his successor did not govern in any way as a pro-labor president. All right, I am going to call it a show. I'm going to call it a week. I will be back Monday. Thank you so much for tuning into Halitics. And yeah, don't forget, if you can, please click like. Let me give you that one more time. There's the thumbs up. Click the thumbs up in YouTube. Join us on Facebook. Would love to have more and more people in Halitics. And we are seeing more of you in Halitics for the conversation. And I'll end with the biggest ask of all, that ask being to subscribe now. That would be just lovely. Would love to have more subscribers every day. I like to see it. I see the numbers tick up, and it always makes me happy. Have a great weekend. I'll be back Monday. I will be talking about my canvassing for Zoran Mamdani, among other topics.